All right, so no contact initiation, Kierkegaardian edition. Let's get to it. All right, I see Nietzsche looking at this like it's war, like it's creating one's own self. And I think Kierkegaard would see this as stages into the leap of faith. That's the way I would check it out. All right, so you're in despair because though you don't really know it, now that she's gone, you are left alone with yourself and you do not know what to do with that self. And this is something that I recognize, it's the void that she leaves in your life. That person you're always texting, that person you always have something else to do with. Now, it does get easier as you get older for these very reasons I'm going to talk to you about. But what led me to this is understanding what Coach Lee was talking about in No Contact, which I thought was, at first, I thought it was genius. And now, as I've grown and realized what the dating market is really like, it's really, the problem is really ontological where he presents it as tactical. Heartbreak is shown as performative when it should be initiative. No contact should be initiative. Okay, he dangles reconciliation over your head like it's the carrot when it should be renunciation straight up. And obviously modern dating has changed. So much so that I think everything is stacked against you as a dude. And you have to accept that. And there's almost a subtle cruelty that comes along with accepting this. Okay, women look at you like you are nothing but a commodity. I promise you, man, if she's not a virgin, if she's a modern woman and she's not a virgin, bro, like that imprint that the first guys have, it's basically cooked, bro. Okay, you are nothing but just this product that she can easily return and swap out for another one because she has hundreds of DMs and hundreds of options on Tinder. Sorry, but not sorry. It just is what it is. You can't go on any further, any day further, not knowing that in your bones. Okay, so you are in despair because deep down you do not know who you are without her. You seek to undo the past, to interpret every glance, every meaning, because even if you can find meaning in this suffering, perhaps you can escape a deeper truth that you were afraid to spend a life with only yourself. It's almost a daunting prospect to think this. It almost is daunting. Eventually you come to like recognize that it's almost inevitable. But also it's important to be able to be by yourself. One of my coworkers told me this quote is like, if you can't be by yourself, what makes you think you could be with someone else? You know what I mean? We all know that cliche, but I mean, it's so much more so today than ever because everything's stacked against you. And then also feminism is so rampant. It is basically the norm. Like women at this point are very frustrating to be with. The average woman just expects too damn much and does nothing, man. It's really, really absurd. So, in the grand scheme of things, I highly recommend Rick Roderick, but you are at war for your soul. Rick Roderick's "The Soul Under Siege" is a great lectures to check out. But in the grand scheme of things, your soul takes priority, right? If there's any one inkling of doubt in the grand schemes of things, if you think something part about you can be eternal or was made by something eternal, something that isn't finite, that isn't just basically some sort of atheism, right? You know, that think about where that places her in the grand scheme of all of existence. It's a very small place. It's a very small compartment you need to put her in, considering the depth and length of the eternal, right? So if she never returns, I remain. If I must live this loss eternally, how can I forbid? It's kind of what you have to go about it now. And dating in the age of woman has become the ritual outside of the domain of God. Okay, we live in Western civilization is feminine. It's feminized, and I do think we will overcorrect again, only because it's too damn much. It's way too damn much. Okay, these like modern women. Don't get me started. Actually, we'll save that for another video. All right, so these are the stages of recovery you can expect. You learn about the aesthetic self, the apparition of the self, the sickness unto death, the temptations of modernity. There's attack upon Christianity, despair, the ethical revealed, an infinite resignation, and the night of faith. Not exactly in these stages, but I put them in the right order, starting now. The aesthetic self revealed. Okay, this is the guy who's always got a plan, a playlist, a girl, a project to distract himself with. Take her away, and suddenly he recognized the supposed self was built on her. For the first time in a long time, you've met yourself without anesthesia. Okay, now before the last point, this is the guy who went along with the Disney fairy tale, not realizing what the girl was. She does not see the Disney fairy tale. She'll take it if that's what you're offering. She'll take it, but she does not believe in it. She does not like buy it. Also, modern women are attracted to aesthetics. This is that performative version of yourself, that Instagram representation of yourself. Modern women today are not designed to actually be with a man. I know this is hard pressed to take everything I take with a grain of salt, but synthesize it how you will. But modern women like the idea of you and not the real you, genuine you. Obviously, if she likes you enough, she'll start to accept more and more parts about yourself that you reveal. But for the most part, they just like the idea of you. They don't give a damn what you go through, how you go through it, anything else about your internal workings. They don't care. They don't care. It is what it is. When I'm discussing this, I want to just discuss it in this matter, which is no contact, and the woman acted as an anesthesia for you. Like the relationship itself was the anesthetic. Because if we're more honest with ourselves, if it wasn't for like the past maybe 40 to 60 years ish, with the exception of the absolute indoctrination that happened to modern women, for the most part, they always came as a package deal. To have a woman and be with a woman and get married and tied, it meant that you were ready to grow up. You were ready to have you were ready to work a secure job, right? You were ready to provide, protect, love honorably. You were ready to do, like, her herself was a package deal. But now today, it's really not any of that anymore. Like the modern woman has been stripped away of all that stuff. So it is a tough place to be in, but nonetheless, ideally speaking, the relationship as you had experienced it invoked those parts about you. Now you have to find your mission, your calling outside of that relationship. Honestly, outside of any relationship, for the sheer fact that the landscape has shifted so dramatically. Anyway, let's continue. The operation of the self. All right, so modern man in search of a soul. Okay, you've been running on fumes of identity. The tank is running low. This is where when she's left, that identity you had with her, it's like a persona wardrobe that no longer fits. What we usually do is we still post, we still lift, we still flirt, we still chase the next thing, and we still try to look for that promise to fill the sudden hole, the sudden void that she created. And the mimetic self appears like a phantom, a persistent image after image, persistent after image that lingers just out of focus. You can see it, right? You can see it. It's almost like you're being this person, but you sort of missed rehearsal. You can't not continue on. You have to go on about your daily business, but at the same time, you can see everything that's kind of like out of habit, out of just basic necessity of day-to-day being. Now, I think it's a good time to talk about some modern anesthesias, only because modernity is gonna throw everything they have at you, everything. Now, I highly recommend you look at the temptations of Christ, which are power, politics, and economics. Now, these are the typical Roman, old-time Roman demons that I think Christ overthrew. This was the three temptations that ruled every Roman's mind before Christ came to the picture and dissolved those demons, or at the very least made it evident and made it well through the Christ image, defeated those demons. Now we have pleasure and comfort as basically the new modernity's anesthesia. So we have digital anesthesia, sexual anesthesia, chemical anesthesia, weed, SSRIs, ADHD meds, alcohol, party drugs. Okay, sexual anesthesia, dating apps, pornography, casual hookups, rebound relationships, digitals, right? Digital anesthesia, TikTok loops, Netflix, YouTube self-improvement binges, no contact binges, all this stuff. Lifestyle anesthesia, biohacking, dopamine detoxes, grind set hustles, gym sessions, religious anesthesias, shallow sermons, Christendom pep talks, Instagram spirituality, faith is therapy, social validations, Instagram likes, Facebook, YouTube comment dopamine, all that jazz, okay? all this stuff. Yeah, recognize that this is just going to be thrown at you, and they're going to be very, very tempting. I would know. Now, this is a Nietzsche quote that I think has a lot to do with this. Very, very good quote. Lonely now and miserably self-distrustful. I took sides, not without resentment, against myself and for everything that hurt me and was hard to me. Thus, I once found more of that way to that courageous pessimism that is the antithesis of all romantic fraud, and as it seems to me today, the way to myself, to my task. That hidden, masterful something for which we have no name until at last it shows itself as our task. That tyrant in us exacts a terrible price for every attempt that we make to escape him or give him the slip, for every premature act of self-constraint, for every reconciliation with those whom we do not belong, for every activity, however reputable, which returns us aside from our main purpose. Yes, even for our very virtue, that would fain protect us from the cruelty of our most individual responsibility. Disease is always the answer when we wish to have doubts of our own rights to our own tasks, when we begin to make it easier for ourselves in any way. How strange and how terrible. It is our very alleviations for which we have to make the severest atonement. And if we want to return to health, we have no choice left. We must load ourselves more heavily than we have ever laden before. Now, the things to like just kind of cue in on real quick is the courageous pessimism that is the antithesis of all romantic fraud. Right. That is that slap of reality that happens when modern love fails. And it is weird that it's funny because he talks about the way to myself, to my task, that hidden masterful something, which is funny because when a relationship ends, I feel like we all have this experience where your path is almost like a lens just cleared it up a little bit. You know what I mean? Like it cleared up just a tiny bit. It's or cleared up all the way. I don't know, but I do know usually this is what happens, right? It's almost like you know exactly what to do now, and it's your calling. It's been made more clear than before. And he's talking about here disease is always the answer when we wish to have doubts to our own rights to our own task. I think what he's alluding to is this internal chatter, but also the external chatter. Everyone's going to call you mentally ill. Everyone's going to say you need help. You need all this, right? Only you know God's calling to you. Only you know that hidden masterful something for which we have no name until at last it reveals itself. But they'll call you whatever until that time. But it is true. He also mentions it here, comfort. Comfort is one of those things. If you want to alleviate yourselves, this is also a temptation to alleviate yourself when that is exactly the opposite, when what you must do. So attack upon Christendom, okay? This is the villain arc. Before you can believe again, you must burn what you believed in wrongly. I think this is the ego's last stand. It almost takes part in the annihilation of itself for the sake of continuity. And the religion, you realize also religion was just another modern anesthetic disguise. Spiritually speaking, it was a cute social club, a place to feel righteous without being transformed. This is kind of when you're going all out and you feel that you know what I mean. I feel like you kind of get that understanding of what the villain arc means, but you think you're turning evil, but you're really just becoming honest. I put this here because I do think this quote is so true. People are so alienated from their own soul that when they come to meet their own soul, they think it's from another star system. All right, so in the light of like what shamans would consider spirituality, okay, what we consider spirituality, normal day-to-day folks and people, is not at all the same, dude. I just want to emphasize that enough, right? What we would consider normal Christian broad at church that considers herself spiritual and religious, right? Because she has the easiest social club ever in all throughout history. Just don't be insufferable and don't be a whore, and God will manufacture you a simp. You know what I mean? Like, just don't do that and you're good. That girl has a totally different understanding of spirituality from like a shaman. And I could speak to this myself, okay? 6 grams of shrooms in silent darkness is nothing. Nothing has prepared for me that kind of experience other than the shamans and the mystics and all these other, works of art and literature. That all that shit didn't make sense until 6 grams of shrooms in silent darkness. All right, all that other stuff is just shallow spirituality. All right, so despair. This is the lowest of the low. Okay, Lack of inward grounding, the estrangement of your own internal task. Okay, this is, you are totally out of line, disjointed from your path. It's not just suffering, but a life where even suffering is dull, this life of permanent anesthesia. Here at no contact, the only way forward is by giving her up absolutely, not pretending, not holding on secretly, but truly surrendering her. Not because it benefits you, but because you have finally realized her insignificance in the scale of existence and your own soul. So the sickness unto death, this is my own take on this, but this is the common form, this is the most common form of despair, which is you not being yourself, you not being who you are. And he said that Kierkegaard mentions the worst form of despair is not knowing you're in despair. But here you can feel the artificiality in the normal day-to-day field of life. You're not worried about feeling alive anymore. You're just trying not to feel dead. And here's a strange but important thing to understand. The non-person is being the most dangerous form of being. This is that performative dude. This is that performative guy that is always onto something, right? His persona is more himself than an actual individual. This is what we would call an empty suit, right? This is that kind of guy what we're talking about. A stuffed shirt. So this is the next step, which is the ethical domain. And I consider this a return to ordinariness. Now, Kierkegaard has a different connotation, but in respect to like no contact and like being ripped apart from your beloved and then having to like recover from that, this is where you kind of, you've understood modernity's anesthesia's machine. And now you kind of you're taking part in some health and some work and some friendships and some subtle vows to yourself. So you're doing participation in daily life again, right? And the one thing that's more important to you is your own becoming. So you're integrating back to society, but choosing to live it as an individual with duty and not dissolved by the crowd, not really being taken by the crowd anymore. Now here I would call it infinite resignation, right? This is the renunciation of the worldly order. Now I think it should be more evident than ever before that today, with what I would consider the feminization of the West, this is where you realize it's not for you anymore. And it's almost like necessary to have a MGTOW bone. I'm not saying go MGTOW. I'm saying to be capable of it at the very least. To be capable of MGTOWing the hell out of there. It is what it is, but you resign yourself from modernity's anesthesia, okay? You release yourself the illusion that the system or woman or career can never save you. And this is also liberation from capitalism's lie that happiness can be purchased or secured through any means, especially through an image, which is a happy. You see it every day, that familial marriage-like life, that like the man with the wife and the cars and all that stuff, right? You recognize that that itself is not actually what will make your soul happy. It couldn't hurt, but it's not what's important. Infinite resignation is the last stage before faith. Now, infinite resignation is the last stage before the night of faith. And this is where you don't expect anything in return anymore. Right? But the night of faith, what's different is that what you give up, you receive it back transfigured. You receive it back all the more through the leap of faith, through trusting God. That's the difference with the night of faith and the infinite resignation. But why this is so difficult is because the leap of faith makes no sense in of itself. The acid test of faith, according to Kierkegaard, is Abraham and Isaac. Him who was willing to kill his own son because he heard some voice tell him that, or, particularly speaking, heard God tell him that. It doesn't make any sense. It's not supposed to. And your calling probably will not make any fucking sense. It will literally feel like you're going against the grain of everyone. And it's more so true today because everything's become feminized. So the discovery of a personal relationship to God is the ultimate ground of moral duty and existential purpose, right? To live as though life has eternal meaning when reason says it doesn't, right? Reason, objective, like atheism, all this shit. You are grounded before eternity at all times. Kierkegaard says, okay, I mentioned that, right? You give up. Whereas MGTOW, you don't really expect anything in return. Here you are expecting it, but through faith, through God returning it, perhaps in the afterlife, whether that be, in heaven, or perhaps in this life later down the road. But here's where the final acceptance is. If she comes back, fine. If not, fine. You focus in your place in eternity, not her. All the more. So face the despair, not just over her, but over yourself. The real wound isn't that she left you. It's that you don't know who you are without her. I just put this here because, well, from my own mistakes and from others, love believes all things. I know it's very cliche, but what Kierkegaard mentioned was that when you betray a beautiful heart, it's really just you that's betrayed it. So if you got done wrong or have been done wrong, right? I understand that sometimes the cycle repeats itself, but nonetheless, wherever you stand, if you did the wrong, just realize that like you kind of bite the bullet. You've done what you've done, but real genuine love is being willing to see the best in everyone else and to live according to that. Now, don't be naive, right? That's the key difference. Don't be naive. Don't go willy wally and fairy tale land, right? Don't do that. But nonetheless, have that genuine love for all things. It's giving someone else the benefit of the doubt to bring forward their best self. And here I highly recommend Rick Roderick, Nietzsche, and Kierkegaard. Love these authors. Now, nonetheless, if you're going through it, let me know. I hope this helped. Otherwise, deuces. Take care, y'all.